They told me they couldn't afford it. That's the exact phrase my mother used. We just can't afford it, sweetheart. While my daughter was lying in a hospital bed at Sick Kids in Toronto with a failing heart and a number on a piece of paper that said $47,000. That was 3 years ago. My daughter was 8. Her name was Poppy. I'm going to say that again because I need you to understand who we're talking about before I tell you the rest of this. Poppy. She had this habit of collecting smooth rocks from every beach we ever visited and lining them up on her windowsill in order of colour. She could name every province and territory before she was 5. She used to say, "I love you more than the moon and also more than cheese," which was significant because she really, really loved cheese. She had a congenital heart condition that we'd managed carefully for years with medication and monitoring. Then in the winter of 2022, when she was 7, something shifted. Her cardiologist at Sick Kids, one of the best in the country, we were lucky in that sense, told us she needed a heart transplant. She'd been added to the national wait list through the Trillium Gift of Life network, but her condition was deteriorating faster than expected. There was a procedure, a bridging surgery, that could stabilize her while she waited. It wasn't the transplant itself. It was just supposed to buy us time. The total cost wasn't covered by OHIP. It was a combination of the procedure, the specialized equipment required for her aftercare at home, and the extended out-of-province consultations we needed with a specialist in Montreal who'd done this exact surgery 15 times. The $47,000 wasn't a surprise bill that fell from the sky. It was a number we'd seen coming for 6 weeks. My husband, I'll call him my husband, even though we weren't married yet, we'd planned the wedding for the following June, had already drained his TFSA and RRSP, paid every penalty. We'd done a GoFundMe. Friends showed up. Co-workers. People we went to school with who we hadn't spoken to in a decade sent $5,100 with little notes that said praying for Poppy and your girl is going to make it. Strangers from a Facebook group for Heart Moms sent gift cards and handwritten letters. We raised $31,000 in 5 weeks. It was extraordinary, and it was $16,000 short, and we were running out of time. My parents live in Oakville. My dad retired from a career in insurance, and my mother had worked in school administration. They weren't rich in the way that word gets thrown around, but they owned their home outright. No mortgage. A cottage up near Parry Sound, RRSPs. A financial advisor they saw twice a year. They were not people who worried about money the way I had worried about money my entire adult life. I called my mother on a Tuesday afternoon, sitting in the family lounge on the cardiac ward. I'd barely slept in 4 days. I told her the exact number we still needed. I told her how much time we had. I heard her breathing on the other end of the phone, and I genuinely thought, she was about to tell me she'd transfer it that evening. She said, "Sweetheart, we just can't afford it right now. We're stretched so thin. You know how things are." I didn't know how things were. I thought I did. I said, "Mom, it's Poppy." I know it is." He said they were sorry. He said they wished things were different. He said they were praying for her. I sat in that family lounge for a long time after we hung up. There was a volunteer who came by with a cart of coffee and muffins, and she asked if I was okay, and I said yes, because I didn't have language for what I was feeling yet. We didn't get the $16,000 in time. The surgery window closed. Poppy's condition declined faster than her team had predicted. She died on a Thursday morning in March, in a room with yellow walls and a mobile of paper stars her ward nurse had helped her make the week before. She was 8 years old. I'm telling you what happened after because it matters. The grief in those first months wasn't something I can accurately describe to someone who hasn't been inside it. It wasn't sadness. It was more like the world had been rewritten in a language I didn't speak anymore. My husband held me together. Some days I held him. We went to grief counselling through a program at Bereaved Families of Ontario. We planted a tree in her memory, in the backyard of the house we'd been renting. We went to her school when they dedicated a little garden space to her. My parents came to the funeral. My mother cried. My father gave a eulogy that talked about Poppy's laugh. They hugged me and said they loved me, and I let them because I was too emptied out to do anything else. My younger brother, he's 4 years younger than me. He works in tech, lives in Vancouver. He didn't make it to the funeral. He sent flowers and a card and texted me that he was devastated and that he'd fly out to see me soon. He never did. I'd always known my brother was my parents' favourite in the way that a lot of firstborn daughters know this. Not from any single dramatic event, but from 1,000 small things accumulated over years. He got the car for his 18th birthday. I got a card. His university tuition was fully covered. Mine was partially covered, and I took on $34,000 in student loans. When I called home, my mother gave me 20 minutes and then had somewhere to be. When he called, those conversations lasted hours. I'd made peace with it mostly, or I thought I had. It was my aunt, my dad's sister, who I've always been close with, who told me 14 months after Poppy died. We were having lunch at a Vietnamese place near her condo in Mississauga. She assumed I knew. That was the thing. She said it so casually, referencing it in passing, something about the market in Vancouver, and wasn't it lucky the timing worked out? I asked her what she was talking about. She got very still, and then she told me that my parents had helped my brother buy his condo in Vancouver, a significant contribution toward the down payment. She didn't know the exact number, but she thought it was somewhere around $85,000. They'd done it quietly, she said. Around the same time they'd told me they were stretched thin. The same time, I drove home from that lunch and I sat in the driveway for 45 minutes. I didn't cry, I just sat there. My husband came out eventually and knocked on the window, and I told him, and I watched his face do something I'd never seen it do before. This slow collapse, like the ground had dropped out from under him. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he said, "They had it." That's all he said. They had it. I want to be clear about what I did and didn't do next, because I know what you might be imagining. I didn't call my parents screaming. I didn't post anything online. I didn't immediately blow up every relationship in my family. I went very quiet, actually, in a way that frightened my husband more than anger would have. I asked my aunt if she could find out anything more specific. She made some careful inquiries. The number was $90,000. The timing was confirmed. It had been finalized 6 weeks before Poppy died. My brother's condo in Kitsilano closed in February. Poppy died in March. They had $90,000 available 6 weeks before my daughter died. I stopped answering my parents' calls. I didn't block them. I just stopped picking up. When my mother texted, I read the messages and put my phone down. I went to my therapist twice a week instead of once. I ran every morning along the waterfront, even when it was February and the wind off the lake was brutal, because I needed somewhere to put the feeling. I started keeping a journal, which I'd never done in my life before Poppy, and in it I wrote things I couldn't say out loud yet. My brother called me about 8 months after I found out. He said he'd heard I was going through something, and he wanted to check in. He didn't mention the condo. He didn't mention our parents. He talked for about 12 minutes about his job and a trip he'd taken to Portugal, and then asked how I was doing, like I was someone who'd had a rough patch at work. I told him I knew about the down payment. The silence on the other end of the line was very long. Then he said, "They offered. I didn't ask them to." I said, "I know you didn't." And I hung up. My therapist talked to me a lot during this period about the difference between understanding something and accepting it. I understood that my parents had made a choice. I understood that legally, morally, in the most technical sense, their money was theirs, and they could do with it what they wanted. I understood all of that. What I couldn't get past, what still catches in my chest when I breathe too deep, is that they looked at me, and they looked at Poppy, and they looked at their number, and they chose differently than I would have chosen, than I think most people would have chosen. They chose, and then they looked me in the eye at her funeral, and they cried, and they never said a word. I changed my phone number 6 months after I found out. Not because of them specifically. It was a long time coming for other reasons. My parents got the new number through my aunt, who gave it to them without thinking, because she still believed we'd work through it eventually. 2 Februaries ago, Just over a year after I found out about the condo, my mother called me from a number I didn't recognize. I picked up. She wasn't calling about me. She was calling because my brother had collapsed at his gym in Vancouver. Cardiac event. He was 31 years old, which is young for that, but it happens. He was in the ICU at Vancouver General. He was stable, but they'd found something. A structural issue. A valve problem that apparently had been flagged mildly in a routine physical years ago and then not followed up on properly. His treatment team was recommending surgery, and there was a possibility, depending on recovery, that he could need a donor for a related procedure. A living-related donation wasn't exactly standard for cardiac cases, but there was a component of his situation involving tissue compatibility that I'm still not sure I fully understand medically, even now. My mother was crying on the phone. She said his name over and over. She said she needed me. I listened to her for a long time without speaking, and then she said it. She said, "You might be the only one who can help him." The reason she said that is because the specialist in Vancouver had already run preliminary compatibility screenings with close family members. Standard first step, my dad wasn't a match. My mother wasn't a match. They'd tested some extended family. I hadn't been tested. But given the genetic profile, I was the most likely candidate among remaining family members. I want to be honest about what I felt in that moment, because I've thought about it many times since. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel like the universe had handed me something. I felt sick. I felt grief and rage, and something that I didn't have a word for. This complicated, exhausting, heavy thing that I imagine anyone who has ever been put in an impossible position by family will recognize. My husband sat across from me at the kitchen table while I was on the phone. He could hear enough. He didn't say anything. He just put his hand on mine. I told my mother I would call her back. I talked to my husband for a long time that night. I talked to my therapist the next morning. I called my aunt. I went for a very long walk along the lakeshore, and I stood at the water's edge in January, watching the ice at the margins. And I thought about Poppy. I thought about what she would think of me, which is maybe a strange thing to think about an 8-year-old, but I knew her. I knew who she was. She used to give her school snack to a kid in her class whose family was going through a hard time. She once asked me, very seriously, if plants could be lonely, because she wanted to make sure she was paying enough attention to her windowsill ones. I knew what she would have thought. I called my mother back the following morning. I told her I would go to Vancouver to get tested. I told her I wasn't making any promises about what happened after the testing, because I wasn't. I needed to know what we were even talking about medically before I could have any conversation about any of it. The test results came back positive for compatibility. I sat with that for 3 days before I told anyone outside of my husband. 3 days of waking up at 4 a.m. and lying in the dark, running through every possible version of EPOS choice. The procedure that was being recommended for my brother was not without risk to me. Not extreme risk. My medical team in Toronto was very straightforward about the probabilities, but not zero risk either. The recovery would take weeks. The success rate for my brother was, with this intervention, substantially improved. Without it, his prognosis was uncertain. I thought about Poppy. I thought about $16,000. I thought about a condo in Kitsilano. I thought about a yellow hospital room with a mobile of paper stars. I thought about my mother saying, "We just can't afford it, sweetheart." And I thought about $90,000 moving quietly between bank accounts while my daughter was still alive. I thought about who I wanted to be. Not for them. For myself. For what I have to live with every morning when I get up and there's no child's voice in the house and I still can't walk past the rock collection on her windowsill because I haven't been able to make myself move it. I decided to proceed. I want to be honest about why, because I think the easy version of this story is that I did it out of pure forgiveness and grace, and that's not true, and Poppy would have wanted me to be honest. I didn't do it because I forgave them. I haven't forgiven them. I did it because my brother is not solely responsible for the choices my parents made. And because I am not capable of making a choice that results in someone dying when I had the ability to prevent it. I know that about myself. I learned it the hard way. I know what it costs to live on the other side of that kind of choice. I did it because I didn't want to become what they were. The surgery was in April. My brother's recovery was long, but the procedure was considered successful. I healed faster than is expected. My husband flew out to be with me. My parents were at the hospital. I didn't speak to them much. When my mother tried to hug me, I stepped back and she understood and she let me go. My brother was not awake for most of those early weeks. When he was conscious enough to have a real conversation, one of the first things he said to me was that he was sorry, not a generic sorry, a specific one. He said he had known for a long time that things were not equal in how our parents treated us. He said he had not done enough with that knowledge. He said he had deposited a check and tried not to think about what the timing meant. I don't know what to do with that. I'm still figuring that out. What I know is this. I am back in Toronto. The rock collection is still on the windowsill. Some mornings I still can't speak before my first coffee, and it has nothing to do with the coffee. My husband is the kind of person who understands that and doesn't make me explain it. My parents sold the cottage in Parry Sound. My mother told my aunt they were giving the proceeds to a pediatric cardiac fund. I don't know if that's enough. I don't know if anything is enough. I don't think forgiveness is a door you just decide to open one day because someone cried in front of you. I think it's something that either happens slowly, like weather, or it doesn't happen at all, and either way you have to keep living. I keep living. Every morning when the sun comes up, I think about what Poppy said, that every single day was worth noticing. She said that when she was 6, standing in our backyard in her pajamas, looking at the sky before school. I think about it every morning. I think it's the most important thing anyone has ever said to me, and it came from a 6-year-old in pajamas, and that's kind of the whole story of her. I don't know what comes next with my family. I don't know if I'll ever sit at a table with my parents and feel like something has been repaired. I know I'm not the same person I was before March of 2022, and I know that the person I've become is someone who made a choice when it was hard and who is trying every day to be worthy of the small voice in her memory that said every day is worth noticing. That's what I have. That's all I have. And most days it's enough to get me out of bed and down to the lakeshore and back.